For those that are new, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications to be notified whenever a brand new video is posted onto this channel. Thank you all so much for your continued support. Now let's begin. Star Wars Episode 8 The Last Jedi is now officially in theaters, and with that having to be said, a lot of us within the Star Wars community are wondering as to what the overall direction is going to be with Star Wars Episode 9. With J.J. Abrams having to return following The Force Awakens, a lot of us fans in the community are wondering as to if they're going to fix the mistakes The Last Jedi had left off, and two very major topics that I wanted to discuss on this video are going to be Snoke and the Knights of Ren. Now, with Snoke having to be dead, spoiler alert, a lot of us were very curious if they were going to dive into Snoke's origins and finding out who he was, what kind of involvement he had with contacting the Emperor many years ago, even while the Empire was still around, and his connection to the dark side. And with that being said, also finding out more information as to whatever happened to the Knights of Ren. So for starters, who is Snoke? Or more or less along the lines now, who was Snoke? That is the question. Who was Snoke? And even though it may seem insignificant now, I think a big part of what makes Star Wars the new trilogy so special was getting the introduction of Snoke via J.J. Abrams. J.J. Abrams introduced this very dark and sinister character, but in The Last Jedi, we didn't really know anything about him. So hopefully enough in Star Wars Episode 9, similar to Force Ghosts, similar to Yoda, and similar to Obi-Wan Kenobi, perhaps maybe it is possible for beings like Snoke to more or less contact the living, which would be really awesome to see how Snoke would be able to contact Kylo Ren, even though he felt betrayed, and during The Last Jedi he clearly had stated that he cannot be betrayed. It would be very awesome to see Snoke return, at least in the form of some type of Force Ghost. Even though it is highly unlikely, I think that more or less along the lines we need to establish who Snoke was for the story to further the narrative. And I also did not like how Snoke was easily killed off in the film, being all knowledgeable, having to be very powerful with the Force itself. I feel as if we need to establish connections, at least having Kylo Ren reference Snoke and talking about him, where he came from, how he picked up Kylo Ren to begin with, how he originally contacted Ben Solo, because a lot of us are very curious as to how Supreme Leader Snoke was able to contact someone like Ben Solo and getting a hold of him, because while Luke Skywalker was training the young Jedi, how in the world did Supreme Leader Snoke during that time manage to find and even contacting Ben Solo? I think that more or less establishing an origin story behind that would be necessary for Kylo Ren's character, because as of right now, Kylo Ren is the new Supreme Leader of the First Order. He took that position away from Supreme Leader Snoke, and I think it only makes sense to further that narrative in how Snoke found him, and conclusively coming full circle in seeing how the pupil betrayed the master. So with that having to be said, Supreme Leader Snoke was a very interesting being. We're never going to see him again, other than the idea that he may be presented in the form of some sort of spiritual essence similar to a Force Ghost. It would be very amazing to see how Snoke can even transcend death itself if that were to occur. If not, then The Last Jedi would have been truly the final film we ever would have seen Snoke in, and I accept that if they don't have any plans on furthering Snoke's story in the upcoming film. As for the Knights of Ren, a similar concept needs to be explained. Whatever happened to the Knights of Ren? Are they still alive? Did Kylo Ren kill off the last of the Knights of Ren? Is he supposed to be the last of the Knights of Ren? The Knights of Ren had a very interesting concept behind their characters, because they were serving under Ben Solo. They were serving under Kylo Ren. And with that being established, whatever happened to them? So it would be very awesome to see if Kylo Ren were to contact the Knights of Ren, if sending them off in a different part of the galaxy, somewhere remote, in doing his dirty work for him. It would be really amazing to see him actually bring them back and having some sort of involvement with the final installment of the trilogy, because Star Wars Episode 9 is going to be the final installment for telling and explaining and concluding the Skywalker story. Ever since Star Wars the original up until this very point has led into the Skywalker story, and with Star Wars Episode 9, it is going to be the final movie in the franchise concluding the Skywalker story and finishing up the lineage. So if you agree with me in wanting to see more of the Knights of Ren, then slap a like down below, because many people in the Star Wars community were wondering ever since Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, as to whatever happened to them. So the novelizations of the Star Wars books do go into detail as to, more or less along the lines of whatever happened to most of them, but we never had a conclusive answer as to if they're still around or not. And with Supreme Leader Snoke, a lot of people within the fandom are very upset because Supreme Leader Snoke, he went out like a chump, he went out like a coward. I mean, for him not to understand what Ben Solo was doing in his mind in turning the lightsaber, perhaps maybe as some have pointed out, maybe this was Snoke's plan the entire time, is to relinquish his title in seeing where Ben stood if he had what it took to even put down his master. But either way, we need a decisive story for Supreme Leader Snoke. We need to know where he came from, we need to know his establishment, and as we go into Star Wars Episode 10 in the future and so on, we need more or less backstories to some of these characters just for the audience to understand as to where this character stands and where this character stems from, having to predate either the rise or the fall of the Empire. And in this case, Snoke was around even during the Empire, which is why it's so interesting, because how did Snoke pick up Ben? Where did he come from? What kind of influence did he have even over the Emperor in trying to recruit him and trying to talk to him telepathically and trying to communicate, while Palpatine in the novelization had heard this voice cry out from this void, from this, vast distance outside of the galaxy, these unknown regions. We need to know where he came from. So at the end of the day, guys, post your comments down below. What are your overall thoughts for the Knights of Ren? What are your overall thoughts on Supreme Leader Snoke? What are your overall thoughts as to what you guys expect to see in the upcoming Star Wars film? Thank you all so very much for watching. If you guys love Star Wars, I do have the official Star Wars theory and speculation playlist, in which you guys can find down in the comment section description below. Check out those videos, guys. Let me know what you all think about the upcoming film, if you believe it's going to be a flop or not. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to slap a like down below. Share this video out to as many people as possible, guys. If you guys enjoyed the content, tune back in for more, and I'll be seeing each and every single one of you guys down in the comment section below. Have a great day, everybody. May the Force be with you. Peace.